everybody, and welcome to the PT on Ice Daily Show. My name is Christina Previtt. I am lead faculty for clinical management of the fitness, athlete, pregnancy, and postpartum. I teach with Kelsey Valentine, my assistant faculty, who is a pelvic floor physiotherapist. We teach an 8-week online course where we talk about how to help athletes, specifically barbell athletes, so CrossFitters, powerlifters, weightlifters. We talk a bit about running and return to endurance sports. We talk about how to get them back to sport, how to allow them to continue to train during their pregnancy, and all these really particular issues that come into women's health, especially during this time in a woman's life. And so if you guys are interested in that course, we have our next cohort starting in September. We're taking a little bit of a break for the summer. And if you guys are in Canada, I don't know where everyone's listening to. I know we have a lot of people coming from the States, but this is a long weekend for us. So I hope you guys are enjoying the sunshine if you are in my neck of the woods, because we are on a long weekend, which is really fun. Okay, so today I thought that we would talk about specifically how to get the pregnant fitness athlete ready for labor. And a lot of women will take things like prenatal classes that talk a lot about, different methods of labor and delivery and the early care of a newborn infant, which is super beneficial, especially if you haven't been around kids a lot. But oftentimes the part that's missing in these classes is what is actually going to happen in a woman's body, how they are going to feel, and the early postpartum period. And so I have 7 things that I think you as a provider should be talking to your fitness athletes about who are pregnant and getting ready for the act of labor, because there's a lot of fear and anxiety around labor, especially for first-time moms who've never experienced it before, or moms who are having their second child and had a relatively traumatic or bad experience during their first labor and delivery or second labor and delivery. And so the first thing that I'm gonna say is that I want you to stop telling them that because they're in shape, they're gonna breeze through labor. I know that it is coming from a good place and that it is a compliment, but it can do more harm than good. So what happens if it doesn't go well? And all of these athletes have this idea that because they're in really good shape, they're going to be totally fine, and then they're not fine. Or something goes wrong. They start to put the blame on themselves. And sometimes it does not matter how strong you are. Your labor can be long, it can be short. It can go well with a spontaneous vaginal delivery. There can be an issue that happens that requires an emergency C-section. So by telling these women and almost dismissing their fears by saying, oh, you're in great shape, no problem. You'll just breeze through labor. That baby will pop right out. No, please stop doing that, because it can actually create this situation where women who've had relatively uncomplicated labor and delivery can feel like they did something wrong because they were pushing for an hour and a half and people said that they would be pushing for 20 minutes or, all of these different things. So please, just because you're in shape, that does not mean that you are going to have the smoothest labor. Being healthy in general, we do know can help with different stages of labor, and exercising during your pregnancy, we know, can reduce certain stages of labor. But the idea that because you're strong, that this baby's just gonna come right out, sometimes it's just not helpful. What is very helpful is to empower your athletes so that they know what to expect, they know what is going to happen, and they know their options. So what I like to do with a lot of my pregnant athletes, especially if they're first-time moms, is talk about, the actual physiology of labor. Because oftentimes people don't know that it's actually the smooth muscle of the uterus that is causing the contractions, and that your pelvic floor needs to relax in order for the baby to descend into the birth canal. And they're doing that Valsalva, and a fitness athlete is very used to controlling their continence during a Valsalva maneuver because they're usually lifting heavy weights. So I like to talk about what is going to happen. So we have the active stage of labor, like the pushing stage of labor, where you're going to be coming and pressing down on your abdomen, but that's to facilitate the uterus and contracting at the top and relaxing on the bottom. I talk to my athletes about, an epidural versus a non-medicated delivery, and how the epidural is considered like the highest form of pain management, but there are other forms. My induction with my daughter was, I got overstimulated and I was given a little bit of morphine and Gravol because I was vomiting, and it just calmed my system down. And so that was the only pain management that I took during my birthing experience. But that pain management definitely helped me get through different parts of my labor. And so I didn't have an epidural, but I did have some type of pain management. So you can talk to them about those options. Talk to them about what happens if there's a C-section. There's a scheduled C-section, which sometimes looks very different than an emergency C-section, where there's a lot that's going on and monitors might be beeping because the baby goes into distress. And just talk about those options and let them ask questions, because I know that there is sometimes a lot of fear around the potential of having a C-section, or people are afraid. Or on the flip side, people would rather have a C-section and not have a vaginal delivery. And so just talking through all of those things can be really important, and it allows them to talk to a physiotherapist and talk about what's happening with their body. Because oftentimes, I don't know if every woman has felt this way, but sometimes the conversation really veers around the child, and I really like to make it about the mom and how, this is like, because everyone says, oh, but it doesn't matter. Like, the baby comes out and it's great. But if you're not feeling good as a woman about what happened during your labor experience, you want to be able to facilitate those conversations so that women can process emotionally what happened to them physically. Okay, the third thing, so number one was stop telling them they're in shape. Number two is empower them by letting them know what is actually going to happen to them. Number three is to teach them how to relax their pelvic floor. I have done PT on ICEs about this in the past, and what I have seen just anecdotally is that some fitness athletes and the weightlifting community, we've had quite a few that have had a failure to progress. And one of my theories for this is that we need to be teaching athletes that they need to contract their pelvic floor when they need to, but that is not when a baby is coming out of your vagina. That you have to relax your pelvic floor, which when you're doing a Valsalva, this group of athletes, these fitness athletes, they have learned that when you are doing a Valsalva, you are trying to increase your pressure and you're trying to keep your continence. So your pelvic floor is contracting to maintain, because it knows that they are about to have a heavy weight on their back or pick a heavy weight off the floor. So what a fitness athlete is going to need to do is almost switch that paradigm that they have done in their sport, and they are going to have to relax their pelvic floor. And that can take a lot of practice. And so really, really important to start working on that during your labor and delivery. And so just thinking about not only keeping the pelvic floor strong, so it's more than just doing Kegels, you actually might need to teach them how to relax in order to allow the baby to descend into the birth canal. Super, super important. So the other, number 4, is going through the different options. So I kind of talked about that with telling them what the physiology of labor is. So I'm going to go through to number 5. So number 5 is talk to them about how they're going to feel afterwards. So oftentimes, we talk about labor and delivery, we talk about the baby coming out, but then what? So then there's all this emotion. You have this hormone drop. Your body feels very, very different. And I think it's an important conversation to be having with your athletes. This baby over the 10 months that you're pregnant, it grows. It grows slowly. But when you are in labor, the baby comes out relatively quickly, although sometimes it doesn't feel like it's really quickly. But compared to your pregnancy, it is a long pregnancy and a short exit. And so I remember feeling like just so odd around what has happened after labor. My body felt very different. I didn't know what to expect. And I wish that somebody would have had conversations with me. Of course, every woman's experience is going to be different, but what's going to happen immediately postpartum? If you have a vaginal delivery, the swelling in the perineum, that's going to happen whether you had a tear or not. What can happen with tears? Hi, Jeff. What is going to feel like after, if you do have a C-section, the scar tissue and the swelling and some of the splinting that you may need to do, just like any other abdominal surgery. And those types of things are going to be really important. Things like the expectation that you're probably going to have a diastasis recti at the very beginning, which is something that a lot of female athletes really are concerned about, is that their abs are going to be separated. Especially in the very early postpartum period, you are going to have that separation because your body just hasn't had the capacity yet to start bringing those tissues back together. It doesn't happen instantaneously, and that is okay. If you had an epidural, that sometimes your legs are going to be completely numb depending on the level of the anesthesia or the analgesic, and that means that you're not going to be able to get up right away. Things like, getting into different positions for breastfeeding, how to take care of your perineum in the early moments postpartum. All of those things that I think knowing those things before you go into labor can be really helpful, because now you have this idea of what to expect after. Number 6 is to make plans to get a pelvic floor physiotherapy assessment. There's certain countries, and I know Canada and the US are not them, that have a pelvic floor physiotherapist come into every woman's room after she's had a baby to start talking about things that they want to talk about, which could be around recovery and when to start doing Kegels and if they need to do Kegels at all, et cetera, et cetera. And so sometimes having that plan and knowing that they're going to be able to, know when to go see a pelvic floor PT, what to start working on in the early postpartum period can be really important. So that's number 6. And then number 7 is to talk to your athletes and set expectations on recovery. A lot of women, myself included, were very, very eager to get back to weightlifting after having a baby. And we want to start talking about what to expect, or what are things that we can do in the early postpartum period, and what are things that we should maybe avoid doing for at least a couple of weeks, and how can we gradually get back onto a plan. Because especially if we have these very type A athletes who are just ready to get their bodies back, or they're ready to get back into their training, we want to set that expectation so that they don't feel like they're behind, or they're not where they think that they're going to be, and talk about the fact that there are a lot of variables that come into your recovery. Okay, so these are my 7 things that I would love every PT to tell their pregnant athlete, every fitness athlete to tell their pregnant athlete. Number 1, stop telling them that they're in shape and that they're going to do great and it's going to be no problem. Because 1, it can come off as very dismissive. And 2, if it doesn't happen that way, it can create a lot of emotional issues that women are going to have to work through, because they thought that they did everything right and they feel like they somehow failed in the birth of their child. Number 2 is empower women to know what is going to be happening to their body. I am such a believer in an informed patient or an informed mom being a happier mom, because they know what's happening in their body. Number 3 is we need to definitely teach our fitness athletes how to relax their pelvic floor. Relaxing your pelvic floor is how that baby descends into the birth canal. It is how we have a successful active stage of labor and can increase our chance of success. Number 4 is go through the different options. Many women are very afraid of things like a C-section or an instrumented assisted delivery. And so if they know what could happen, then in the case that it does happen to them, they may not feel as negatively towards those types of outcomes in their labor and delivery. Number 5, discuss with your athletes how they are going to feel after. We talk about what's going to happen with the baby, but sometimes we neglect the mom. And, you talk about how your body is going to feel very different, how your perineum will be swollen or your C-section scar is going to be swollen, how you're probably going to feel extremely fatigued and lethargic. You're going to feel like, you are just exhausted, and it's because your body went through something very traumatic. No matter what way your baby came into the world, it was a very, very tough experience on your body, and it's going to take some time to come back from. Number 6, make plans to get a pelvic floor assessment. I'm a true believer. I'm not an internal pelvic floor physiotherapist, but I refer all of my clients to Kelsey, and I really do believe that even if you don't think that you're having any issues, I think it's a very important conversation and an area where a woman can get some idea about what's going on in her body post-delivery, because things do change after having a baby and don't come back 100% to their normal, especially in that pelvic floor region. And then number 7 is set expectations on recovery. Know that for a lot of women, especially strength athletes, it's going to take 9 months to a year for you to be getting back to your baseline level of strength. It's just the way that it is. It takes a lot of time to come back, and you've had a significant episode. So you had a bunch of deconditioning that happened during pregnancy, even if you trained the whole time. And you had to recover for 6 weeks, you took time off, and then you had to get back into training very slowly and respect your body's recovery process. So if they know that going in, then if they're at 3 months postpartum and they're not doing the same stringing of muscle ups that they were doing before, then they're not going to feel like they're failing in their postpartum recovery. So those are my 7 items that I really wish that every pelvic floor physiotherapist or every PT would talk to their fitness athletes about as they're getting ready for actual labor. All right, guys, I hope you found that helpful. Let me know if there's any other things that you really like to tell your fitness athletes who are pregnant as they're getting ready to give birth to their little one. I would love to hear that. Maybe we can create a bigger list. From there, I will see you guys next Monday. Actually, you're also going to see me on Wednesday with Jerry and I. So you're going to see me twice this week. Woohoo! And I will see you guys on Wednesday. I hope you guys have a wonderful start to your week. If you guys are looking for information on our pregnancy and postpartum course, you can go to ptionice.com under online courses. Other than that, have a great day, and we'll see you soon.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptionice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptionice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.